You guys, I'd like to stay on the certification topic, but talk about product certification. We're talking about multi-sensors. There are some challenges out there. There are some key issues around multi-sensors and the way their certification is presented, particularly to the installation companies or even the end users. Can we talk about that? Will, you might want to jump in on this because we've talked about this before, haven't we?
Yes. When we're talking about multi-sensors, and the certification of the multi-sensor is important. Which elements of EN54 has it been certificated to? Is it just EN54-7 and I can't remember the one for heat?
It's 5, I think.
5 and EN54-5 for heat. Or is it one of the proper multi-sensors, 29, 30 and 31? Even remembering things now. And it's important that when you are trying to buy a multi-sensor, that the manufacturer can prove with a declaration of performance, declarations of conformity for the other elements of it, that they have the right certification, they have had the right testing, it's required under the CPR regulations, and that declaration of performance is given to the end user and part of the O&M manual to prove that, yeah, we have got the right certification for multi-sensors. Like I keep saying, not all multi-sensors are created equal. And the certification is quite interesting when you start to look and delve very deeply and say, well, what is it certificated? And what mode is it certificated? Which element? You say you've got one with 24. Now, you say, well, okay, you say 24. Well, you put that into perspective. Each one of those 24 elements has been independently tested. That's not a quick process. It's not a cheap process. There's been a big investment in testing there. And I applaud you for doing that, because not many people want to spend that much money testing products, because it's not cheap. And they need to be correct, and having more modes just gives you more options, enables you to fine-tune the system better. So when you are looking at multi-sensors and certification, look at it carefully and see exactly what it's certificated to.
What can we do as an industry? It's quite a broad question, but does anybody have any feelings on that? From the fire safety industry, what can we do collectively to improve the practices around multi-sensors?
Well, I think that we've already hit on the main part, which is provide better training for not only specifiers and designers, but also all the way down the line to installers, commissioning engineers, and ultimately the service and maintenance people. I think that's something that needs to be installed into these people, so they know exactly what's what. I think routine maintenance, O&M manuals, as we've previously agreed, with full information available, be it online or physical, is certainly one of the practices required.
I would say documentation and documentation and documentation. So they know what they're designing. The documentation flows through to the commissioning engineer, so it's programmed correctly, which then flows through into the maintenance engineer, so it's tested and maintained properly, and that the end user knows what they've got. I think we've got multi-sensors. Well, what are they set as? I don't know. It's a multi-sensor. The information flow is key, I think, here.
Question about how installers and end users can keep their multi-sensors up to date, depending on the environment they're installed in. What sort of advice can we give there, Paul?
Well, other than to echo what we've already said, which is the whole thing to do with training, but when it comes down to multi-sensors, it's making sure that they are tested in a compliant way. In the standards, it refers to two test methodologies, the sequential test where you're testing them separately, and the simultaneous test where you test them together. Going back to one of your previous questions about what are the manufacturers actually doing, one of the key bits here, which is relevant to your new multi-sensor, is you've got that ability to give separate channel notifications. So when a test is carried out, you know which sensor is actually activated. Now this is going to be really key going forward as we get more and more devices coming onto the market that can actually do that, because the big advantage this gives is it then means you can actually use the combination tester such as Testify, which is the specialized test equipment that Terry was referring to earlier, because that's the only tester currently on the market that can actually do a combined test. And the beauty of doing a combined test is you're giving that detector exactly the stimulus that it's actually looking for to give it the quickest activation time. And this means that you're not wasting time on site. You can get through and you can do quick and compliant testing, and there's less likely to be corner cutting or incorrect testing carried out. And this is some of the problems with some of the older legacy multi-sensors are actually out there, which don't give separate notification of which sensors have actually activated, because the only compliant way to test those is to do a sequential test. And it's that sequential test that's feeding, I was saying earlier about the average time to alarm is getting longer and longer and longer. This is what's actually feeding that, because there's more and more people doing the sequential test. In time, as we get more and more multi-sensors that give separate channel notification and more combination tests are being performed, we'll see the average time to alarm coming down. So obviously the whole site can be tested in a more efficient way and without causing any problems at all. So these are the things that I think in particular are key here, is being aware of the devices you've got. How do they respond to the testing? Is it a simultaneous test or is it a sequential test? The standards do say that as long as the manufacturer actually agrees, that a sequential test can be carried out even on the newer detectors, but you're not getting any of the savings there, so it's a bit of a pointless thing. So if you are testing these newer detectors, far better to use the appropriate test equipment that gives you the quicker compliant test. That's really all I've got to add on that one.
Just to clarify that the Testify product that you were referring to, Paul, is made by Detectortesters, and it can test smoke, heat, and CO all in one unit.
That's right. There's two models on the market. There's the Testify 1000, which is smoke and heat, which is probably the more popular one within the UK. But we also have the Testify 2000, which also has, in addition, carbon monoxide in there. I should point out that it's specifically designed to give the parts per million output of CO for testing CO sensors configured for fire, and not necessarily CO sensors configured for life safety, because there's obviously a lot higher level. We do find a lot of people are using Testify for doing that test, and how successful they actually are depends on the make and the model of the device they're actually testing, and certainly with your device, from what I can understand with the tests I've actually seen, because it's nice and small and compact, it fits neatly within the test cup. You get a good seal with the actual bellows around the top, so you're not going to get any dilution of the CO, so you can actually test in CO life safety mode as well. But it was specifically designed for fire, I should point that out.
Terry, did you have a view on that?
Well, with the changing face of fire systems, there are now, or will be on the market, additional facilities to monitor your sensors, and mainly multi-sensors, via remote access, via BMS systems, etc., etc. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at in more detail in the future. That there are the possibilities of having that information available.
How do we stand, Will, with regulations though? Because at the moment there has to be an on-site test, doesn't there? There's nothing to say that you can get around that at all with technology.
Not at the moment. And one of the reasons behind the on-site test is that it's not a test of a fire alarm system, it's an inspection and test of a fire alarm system. So you need to inspect it, you need to see, have they put a rubber glove over the sensor? Doing that remotely won't tell you, People love to block sensors. Christmas time's always fun. If you ever service at Christmas time, they find that yes, the fire alarm sensor is a really good place to stick the tinsel to, and not always does it always come off either. So people do weird things because it's just a thing on the ceiling, they don't really know. So doing remote testing, well, some of the information you can get out the panel is really good and is very good to be sent to a remote site for logging purposes. Doing remote servicing is a little bit difficult with fire because we're trying to do an inspection at the same time. So we still need the 6 monthly inspection visit. We won't be testing every device at 6 months, but over a 12-month period, we will be testing 100% of all devices. So using the right test equipment is key, because as Paul said, it takes a lot longer and time is money. So using the right test equipment and having the right information about, well, what is the multi-sensor I'm testing? I bring it all the way back. Key to documentation is that if you don't know why isn't it going off? Well, this one is actually a CO. I'm only using the Testify 1000. It doesn't work.